one on Thursday, and then Tuesday you're gonna help me. And then on Tuesday, and then again on Thursday, we're just gonna keep on doing it. So just be aware of how that's gonna go.
I don't. It's not like.
Did you whatever?
There's no like people. Like there's no one.
Oh, okay. All right, it's fine. Thank you. All right, so this is the deal. That's okay. All right, so the period of 1200 to 1450, the big idea. So those of you who are taking notes, good job. The big idea of 1200 to 1450 is essentially the interconnectedness of the Eastern Hemisphere. Okay? During that time period, what you have is you have Asia, Africa, and Europe, especially at the end of the period, who are going to come together and are now going to be more interconnected, right? The first stage of globalization. Okay? So what we're going to do here today is we're going to look at the different trade routes, and we're going to look at some of the civilizations and how that kind of goes down. I will, Ms. Krasner and I will post these on our Canvas pages, so you guys have access to it. Okay? So, what? I don't know yet. I'll let you know. Okay. So, you're looking at this interaction. There are three main trade routes that dominated this time period. One of which is the Silk Roads, the other is the Indian Ocean Trade Network, and the Trans-Saharan Trade Network. So during this time period, those are the three dominant trade networks. Again, Trans-Saharan, Silk, Indian Ocean. Okay? So we'll start out with the Silk Road, and as you can see here, the Silk Road is going to connect all the way through the Pacific Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea. Okay? From the Pacific to the Mediterranean Sea. So be aware of that. Now, this is also land-based. Okay, that's an important concept to understand. It is a land-based trade route. What that means is that everything that's going to be transported is either going to be done by foot or by beast of burden, right? In other words, camels or horses carrying those items. So, for that reason, when we talk about the Silk Road is always going to be luxury goods. Okay? It's always going to be luxury goods. So up here you can see the slide. Who is involved? The first thing you have to look at is these are going to change over time, over this time period. Remember, 1200 to 1450 is 200 years worth of history. So things are going to kind of change as we go, and I'll explain that in a second. So who is involved? You have China, which is the Song Dynasty. The Mongols, who are going to come in during the 1300s, 1200s rather, and then you have Southwest Asia. Southwest Asia is another way of saying the Middle East, and Southeast Asia is obviously places like Vietnam, Cambodia, those areas. Okay, so those are the areas that are going to be involved in this trade network. Okay, and during this time period, this is going to be a very dominant trade network. Now, in terms of goods that are going to be exchanged, remember, you don't have to copy these slides, you're going to have access to them. So you don't have to worry about that. So what was exchanged or diffused? Luxury goods, sugar, porcelain, silk, gold. Things that can be carried, right, by hand or on, the back of a horse or a camel or wherever else they're going to go. It's going to be something that's going to be smaller, not bulk items. Indian Ocean Trade Network, bulk items, right? Silk Roads, luxury goods. In addition, you're going to have the spread of Islam, Buddhism especially, Christianity later on, okay? That's going to be later on in the time period, but that's because of the Europeans starting to come out of the Dark Ages. And then one of the things they love to ask about, and Dave loves it, is champa rice, right? Champa rice is going to diffuse along the Silk Road, especially the champa rice is going to come out of Southeast Asia, and it's going to head into the Song Dynasty. And that's going to cause an increase in population. So champa rice is going to be really important. It's going to be one of those goods, and I'm going to mention it again, that are going to increase population in China because it's such sustainable food. Okay? All right. In terms of important vocabulary for the Silk Roads, you have the caravanserai, which those are the stop-off points, right? If you remember when we talked about the Silk Roads 100 years ago, those are those areas, they were kind of like trading post centers along the Silk Road where, people would go and they'd rest their horses or whatever else. This is also where you would find a lot of the plague spread, right? When people sustain in one area, we've learned about that during COVID, that's where it's going to kind of be. So we see that in that region. You're also going to see the use of paper money. Kashgar and Samarkand are examples of trading post spots along the Silk Road. Then you have Marco Polo, who we'll come back to later, the Khanates with the Mongols, and the Yuan dynasty. The Yuan dynasty is what the Song dynasty becomes under the Mongols. Okay, the Yuan is Mongolian. All right, and we'll talk about that when we get to the Mongols. All right, the next trade network, very quickly, is I just want to talk to you a little bit. Sorry, before I go further. With religion, I want you to remember that with the Silk Road, you are going to see Islam kind of move into this region right here. This, for those people that are home, what I mean by that is it's going to move to places closer into India, northern India. So you're going to have some movement of Islam along the Silk Road at that point. Buddhism is going to spread into China for the Silk Road, okay? So Buddhism is going to spread that way. And then later on, Christianity is going to obviously spread a little bit out of Europe, but you're not going to see that much of that, right? The dominant religion spreading are going to be Islam and Buddhism. Islam, during this time period, is the dominant faith. That's the one you got to kind of focus on. You'll see that when we get to the other trade routes. All right, the next one, Trans-Saharan Trade Network. Very easy to remember, right? Trans-Saharan is, again, land-based, all right? When you look at it, obviously, a lot of it is going to come out of West Africa, right? The Trans-Saharan, so it's a desert trading, it's land-based, and it's going to come out of those West African kingdoms, starting with Ghana and all the way up through the Songhai. And obviously the Mali is in the middle. We'll come back to that in a second. But the Ghana, then the Mali, and the Songhai. All right. So who's involved? The Mali Empire, obviously, is the big one. Mansa Musa. I'm going to be going through these empires individually moving forward. So it'll be cool. So Mali, you have Mansa Musa. The Middle Eastern empires, which at this point is Dar al-Islam and the end of Dar al-Islam. And then you have Southern Europe and Spain. Because Southern Europe and Spain was the Umayyad. This is something you might want to look a little asterisk, because this is the College Board likes to annoy people with this. Where the rest of Europe is in the Dark Ages, Spain continues to flourish because they are Islamic. Okay? They are Islamic, so keep that in mind. All right. In terms of what was exchanged and diffused, it's obviously the gold salt trade. And you also have, the big one is going to be the spread of Islam to Northern Africa from the Middle East. And that's going to be by way of Mansa Musa. And obviously you're going to have slaves that are going to be moving all across Northern Africa in the Islamic African trade network. Okay? What they like to know on the AP exam is they like you to know who's involved, what they're exchanging, where it's going, who are the parties involved. Okay, so we can see Islam already a big deal. In terms of important vocabulary, you have the caravans, right? Caravans are going to be groups of people that are going to be traveling throughout the Sahara Desert. They're going to be traveling together in these large groups. Mansa Musa, leader of the Mali Empire, he essentially is the reason that Islam becomes strong in Northern Africa, right? Timbuktu is a trading and cultural center in Northern Africa. Camels, they got humps. And they're actually, camels are considered an innovation. Sorry, animal activists. But they are considered an innovation, right? They're going to be used in the Sahara Desert because they can store their water for longer. And then lastly, Ibn Battuta. Ibn Battuta and Marco Polo, though they're pretty close to being contemporaries, they're always kind of looked at as the same because they're benefiting from these trade routes. They're a demonstration that people can move from one place to the other. Okay? All right, and the last one is the Indian Ocean Trade Network. Okay? Indian Ocean is obviously maritime based. And the areas that are going to be involved in the Indian Ocean Trade Network are going to be, it's first of all, it's dominated by Islamic merchants. Whenever you see Indian Ocean Trade Network, pre-1450 is Islamic merchants. Okay? Pre-1450 Islamic merchants. Their knowledge of you got to remember, right? At this point in time, 1200, the Islamic world is going through, or they're kind of coming at the end of their golden age. The Chinese are coming at the end of their golden age. They are advanced in science and math and all that kind of crap. So as a result of that, they're going to have a lot of knowledge at this point. So the astrolabe, they're going to know about. They're going to know about how the monsoons work. Their shipbuilding is going to be high level, and they're going to be able to travel long distances. So what I want you to remember is that the reason why they're able to dominate the Indian Ocean Trade Network is their advances in technology. Places that are going to be involved: India, the Swahili city-states on the East African coast, China, which is going to be China a little bit, put a little asterisk. I would say China is just a little bit that's going to be involved, especially under Zheng He a little bit later on. Southeast Asia, right? That's the Khmer we mentioned in the class today, and then the Middle East. In terms of Southwest Asia, they're going to be involved. We have evidence, just to make sure that you understand, the Swahili city-states and the Middle East are trading at this point because there were actually African slave revolts in Mesopotamia at this point. So there are Africans in Mesopotamia working. So that's big important thing. What was exchanged? Islam, obviously huge. To East Africa, regular goods were transported. Now this is the key. You can write this down. Whereas the Silk Road is all about luxury goods, the Indian Ocean Trade Network is like Costco, like BJ's. It's all bulk items. So I want you guys to think of that. It's bulk items because it's going to be transported by boat. So that's a bigger deal. So always remember that with the Indian Ocean Trade Network, we're looking at bulk items being transported from one place to the other. Got it? Okay. Good. All right. So those are the major trade routes, right? And if you notice, we didn't talk about anything going on in the Americas at this point because Americas are basically isolated from the rest of the world. So we're not looking at those trade networks. There is an additional trade network that we didn't really mention in class very much that's popular at this point. It's called the Hanseatic League. It's located in Northern Europe during the Dark Ages. The Hanseatic League. It's HANSEATIC League. And that was a trade network in Northern Europe during the Dark Ages. Just kind of like having in the back of your head, if you see it on a multiple choice, if you see it in a document or wherever else, you're not writing about the Hanseatic League. You know what I mean? But I just want you to, if you see it, I want you to kind of have a frame of reference. It's 1200 to 1450 Northern Europe. All right. Now, the reason why I have Ibn Battuta up here is because Ibn Battuta is an important figure during this time. Because what he demonstrates is the safety of moving around these trade networks. So, for one thing, if you guys remember, Ibn Battuta was Islamic. He was an Islamic scholar who traveled all throughout Afro, and really Afro and Asia, right? So Africa, Northern Africa, into the Middle East, all the way into China, throughout the Indian Ocean. And he is an Islamic scholar who basically is going around observing how Islam is going to be practiced. So his significance is two ways. One, the fact that he's Islamic and he can travel freely is big, right? The second thing, though, is that there's three things. Secondly, is that because he can travel, he sees so much and he documents everything. So if you guys remember back to the beginning of the year, this is where he goes to the Mali Empire and he's all sorts of angry about how Muslims are kind of, how especially women within the Mali Empire are like not dressed or they're not acting as he thinks they should be. He's almost being critical of it. And that's the first time that we witness a little bit of syncretism, right? Where even though the Mali Empire becomes Islamic, they still maintain many of their African traditions, like the way women dress or the women are treated, because we know that within African societies, women do have a greater role in terms of the family. So it's one of those things that I want you to be aware of, but this is the time period of Ibn Battuta. All right, so here are the empires committed, okay? I'm gonna go through each of these. I'm gonna hold off the Mongols to the end because they're the best. All right, Latin America. You have the Aztecs, the Incas, and the Mayas. We're gonna ignore the Mayas, I don't care. The Aztecs, we're gonna talk about, we'll talk about the Incas. In Africa during this time period, we're looking at the Swahili and the Mali. In China, we're looking at the Song and the Yuan. Okay, the Song and the Yuan rather. Europe, you're looking at feudalism in the Holy Roman Empire. In the Middle East, we're looking at the Abbasids, Southwest Asia. At this point, they're kind of coming to an end, so we're only going to talk about them for a couple seconds. The Mongols. We're going to spend some time talking about the Mongols and looking at the different Khanates. I would definitely know the Khanates, by the way. I have them written down here. You have the Ilkhanate in the Middle East. You have the Yuan in China. You have the Shagata in Afghanistan. And then you have the Golden Horde in Russia. Okay? All right. So we're going to go through each one of these now. So we might go a little later than I thought. I'm sorry. All right. Look. It's the Aztecs and the Incas. Okay. So what do we remember about the Aztecs and the Incas? Let's do the Aztecs first. Okay? So the first thing that you need to know is that these two civilizations remain relatively isolated during this time period. The Incas and the Aztecs do not affect each other in any way. Okay? And there's a few reasons why. In both cases, they do not have beasts of burden. What that means is they don't have animals to carry crap. So movement is going to be more difficult. Okay? So remember that. Okay? No beasts of burden. All right, let's talk about the Aztecs. So the Aztecs are located in Mexico. They are the capital of the Aztec Empire is Tenochtitlan. Okay, I'm not spelling that for you. Is Tenochtitlan, which is modern day Mexico City. Tenochtitlan was built on a lake, and they're kind of like in the middle of some rough terrain. And for that reason, the Aztecs really don't go far out. The big thing they like to talk about with the Aztec Empire, what I want you to remember, is they like to talk about the floating gardens, the chinampas, right? That's considered an innovation for food production, the chinampas. Okay? Those are those floating gardens that they build under the Aztec. They are a tributary collection system. In other words, they collect tribute from the people that they conquer. Okay? They collect tribute from the people that they conquer. Religiously, right, they're going to be, they talk about human sacrifice and the bloodletting and all those things. The people that they conquer, they treat horribly. They generally sacrifice them for the gods. You don't have to go crazy with the Aztecs. If there's an empire that you're kind of leaving out of your studying, the Aztecs is probably the one. You're not, please, I'm begging you, do not write an essay about the Aztecs. Okay? They're not what you want to write about. The Incas. The Incas, on the other hand, we got a few things that we do need to know. The first thing you need to know is the Incas are in terms of their length of an empire, they are known for their complex road system and their use of runners. They also do not have a written language. Okay? They do not have a written language. That's kind of an important thing as well. So their record keeping was with those strings that they used, right? Dave, what were they called? Runners. Hmm? No, not the people. The record system with the strings. I'm having like a brain fart. What is that?
0% chance. If Brent doesn't know, it just exists.
Oh, the Quipo. Yeah, sorry, the Quipo. The Quipo was their record system. Okay? Quipo were these strings. Those of you at home, you can't see this, too bad. They were like these strings that they would hang. And that was the way they kept records. Otherwise, they didn't have a written system. Okay? The Inca also used the Midas system. That was their labor system they used, which is going to be used by the Spanish when they conquered. The Midas system. Okay, that was the labor system that they used. They also used terrace farming, where they would cut into the mountains to grow crops. And they would also be collecting tribute from the people they conquered, but usually in forms of labor. Okay, modern day Peru. All right, got it? Okay. So
What are runners?
what are runners?
Yeah.
They're people that run. They're the messengers for the Inca.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so they're literally people that are runners. They're
running with stuff.
they're running messages back and forth within the empire. So it's a way to kind of control the population. It's also they might run luxury goods from one place to another, but because they don't have animals that can do it, they got to use human beings to do it. They were in really good shape. All right. Africa. We're going to focus on the Mali Empire. Okay, so when we talk about Africa, we're looking at the west, the Western kingdoms. It goes Ghana, then Mali. Mali is the one that I want you to know the most about. So what do we know about the Mali? The Mali has a centralized administration, and the leader you need to remember is Mansa Musa. Now, because Mansa Musa has so much gold, he's able to trade so much. This is a trading empire. Now, that's something you have to remember also. It's not coincidental that they are both trading and Islamic. Because remember, Muslim, merchant. Muslim, merchant. Merchants, Muslims. Muslims always want to exchange. They're always trading goods. So this is a trading empire, and this is the gold salt trade. So he's going to trade gold for a lot of different luxury items back into the country or back into the kingdom. But by doing so, he is also going to bring Islamic beliefs back. He is going to make trade a priority for the Mali Empire. That's why he's going to set up cities like Timbuktu to try to maintain that trade and make it safe for exchanging of goods. Okay. At one point or another, the Mali Empire is the wealthiest. You argue that Mansa Musa was the wealthiest person in the world. You don't need to know any of that, but you do need to know that there is a centralized administration where he's essentially controlling everything. Okay? Good. Swahili. Okay, where the Mali Empire is centralized, the Swahili city-states is a decentralized empire. Okay? They are also Islamic by way of the Indian Ocean Trade Network. They are contemporary or going on at the same time as the Mali. Again, if I had my choice of what I was going to write about on an essay, I would pick the Mali before I pick the Swahili. Always on the AP exam, by the way, don't think that you're like impressing anybody by writing about a more difficult topic. Write about what you know, right? Don't complicate stuff. So like from this time period, what you want to do is you want to study one of the African empires. You want to study one of the American empires. And I would say you want to study, one of the Asian empires. That's how I would do it, okay? You don't have to know everything about everything. You got to know big ideas, okay? All right, so the song, okay. So in China, this is the time of the Chinese Golden Age, leading up to around 1200, 1300. This is the Chinese Golden Age. You have the Song Dynasty. The Song Dynasty is going to be very traditional in terms of Confucianist ideals. They use the civil service exam. They are going to, they ask this question sometimes, and it's a weird question. They are expanding by land expansion. So whereas other areas might be sea-based expansion, the Song Dynasty is going to be land-based expansion. Expansion rather. Obviously, we already talked about the Champa rice, and we know that under the Song Dynasty, they are going to have a stable food supply because of the Champa rice. They are going to be very, very stable during this time period, and because it's their golden age, they're going to have a lot of achievements. Okay? They're going to have a lot of achievements in science, in math. Porcelain is going to be huge, and they're going to be a major trading empire along the Silk Roads and into Southeast Asia. Okay? Major trading empire throughout the Silk Roads and going into Southeast Asia. All right? Okay. All right. At this time in Europe, okay, Europe is going through the Dark Ages. All right? They're going to start coming out of it. I'm going to explain that to you in a little bit. But at this point in time, what you're looking at is the end of the Dark Ages in Europe. So that is dominated by a couple of key principles. In Europe, you have, this is your, the Christian church is the centralizing force. Okay? Always remember the Christian church within the Dark Ages is that centralized force. Okay? They are controlling everything. In terms of the way society is organized, it is, with the church, you got to know the Holy Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire, basically the Pope is the leader of it, and they're going to be a central political figure, especially in Central Europe. You can see it right here, Italy, Austria, going into north into the Germanic states. That's going to be a very important place. So the Holy Roman Empire is the other thing I want you to know. Lastly, but probably most important, is you have European feudalism. Okay? This is the time of feudalism. Feudalism, it's decentralized. Please keep that in mind. We're talking about decentralized feudalism. What this means is that during this time, people are going to be living on manors, and there's that strict social hierarchy where you have the nobles or the lords on the top, and you have serfs on the bottom. But it is a decentralized system. When we talk about the Tokugawa, maybe next time. When we talk about Tokugawa is centralized feudalism. This is decentralized feudalism because the monarchs don't have any authority. The monarchs are kind of on the side. Okay? This is also where you have Europe is going to be predominantly agricultural. They're not going to have a lot of manufacturing at this point. You're not seeing a lot of advancements in science or math at this point. You're seeing Europe kind of just chilling, right? Not the safest place to be. It is what it is. So let's do the math now. Europe is going through the Dark Ages. Everywhere else is going through a golden age. The Middle East is in a golden age. China is in a golden age. Africa is in a golden age. But the Europeans are staying put. They're stagnant. Does everybody got that? All right. Now, we're kind of at the middle. What's up, right? No, just the fact that they get conquered by the Ottomans. That's all I would really know about this. I mean, do you need to know it? Look at all this crap that we know. All right. Now, all of this stuff is going on, and then we have the Mongols. Now, there we go. The Mongols are empire killers. Write that down. The Mongols are empire destroyers. They're empire killers. However you want to word it, that's what they are. They bring an end to the Golden Age in China. They bring an end to the Golden Age in the Middle East. They destroy it. Okay? Now, with the Mongols, you have to know a couple of things. One, the Mongols were pastoralists. Okay? The Mongols were pastoralists. What that means is that they were herders. So they would be considered nomadic. Okay? The Mongols were originally nomadic. And what they would do is they would move into places where there were civilized people and interact with them and then take them over. Okay? So they're moving from place to place. And what eventually happens is Genghis Khan or Chinggis Khan becomes the leader and founder of the Mongol Empire. Okay? Now, a couple of things that you have to remember about the Mongol Empire. technology. You gotta know that they are gonna be using horses, they're gonna be conquering people, they're gonna be using bows and arrows and all that kind of crap. Okay? The stirrup is very important under the stirrup and the saddle are very important under the Mongol Empire. Okay, it's going to help them with their conquest. They're going to be able to ride at fast speeds and all that kind of crap. Now, with the Mongols, after Genghis Khan dies, the empire is going to be divided into these different khanates. Okay, we already said what they were, right? We said that in the Middle East, you have the Ilkhanate. In Afghanistan area, you have the Chagatal. In Russia, you have the Golden Horde. And in China, you have the Yuan Dynasty. Okay? So politically, and Russia, the Golden Horde. Politically, they are divided. Economically, they're united. Okay? Politically divided, economically united, because they make the Silk Road safe. They are nomadic in their traditions. So they want to be moving stuff from place to place. So during this time period, when they're in power, which is like the 1300s, the Mongols are going to make it so that the Silk Road is safe and goods can move freely all throughout Asia. Okay? All throughout Asia, the goods are going to be able to move freely. And that's an important thing to remember. Because now what you're doing is you're setting up, basically, the Europeans coming out of the Dark Ages. Okay? Because once goods are moving freely from the Pacific all the way to the Middle East, it's going to make things be very, very connected. Okay? I think I'm going to explain that to you guys today. I don't know if I was going to do that or not. All right. Okay, that was the last slide. All right, so I want to show you guys this really quick. This is, when you look at the period 1200 to 1450, it's a very small part of the AP exam. But it is, in terms of context, it's very important for what's coming out next. And I'm going to probably explain this again on Thursday, but we're kind of flowing into it, so I want to make sure you're aware of it. While this is going on, the Europeans are engaged in the Crusades. Okay? And the Crusades are these holy wars where the Pope is sending people down from Europe to recapture the Holy Land from the Middle East. From the Muslims in the Middle East. And they're sending all of this stuff. They're sending people down to fight. They're not very successful. But this is what's happened, and this is how the world becomes connected during this time. All of those things that are now coming from China and now going towards this area, and all of these achievements that have occurred because of their golden ages and because of the Mongols allowing it to go freely, are going to end up in the Middle East. And when the Europeans go there to fight against the Muslims during the Crusades, starting around 1100 CE, they're going to bring back all of that stuff with them. Okay? They're going to bring back that porcelain. They're going to bring back.
Will Christina Jean Louise please report to the Commons? Christina Jean Louise, please report to the Commons.
They're going to bring silk back to Europe. They're going to bring all of that stuff, and they're going to bring that knowledge of the world back to Europe, which is going to result in the Renaissance. Right? This openness is going to result in the Renaissance. Right? Because Europeans are going to bring that stuff back. The Renaissance is a reawakening in Europe from what it was like before the Dark Ages. Okay? And that's not going to really be made possible unless the Mongols had opened all of this stuff up. Now, additionally, and we'll definitely get to this on Thursday. Additionally, what's going to come with this is then the plague is going to come. And that's going to mess up everything in Europe. And that's kind of where we're going to start on Thursday. Okay? All right, we got 1200 to 1450. Broad strokes.
That's it? You made it seem like you've been for an hour.
You've been here for, I know I said this was a short one.
All
All right, guys. Let's go to 10 minutes.
Let's go to
construction control. There's no education. It's more like so they go south. We're gonna talk a little bit more about
I know when they go there, they bring back UCR, which leads to the Renaissance. Well, it's part of what leads to the Renaissance.
Yes, so that's what you need to know is how does it
So just the fact that